Someone tells you that you did a great job. Maybe they say you look good, or that you are smart, or that they really admire how you handled something. And for a second, it almost lands. Then something in you quietly says, they're just being nice, or they don't know the full picture, or simply, yeah, but. That yeah, but is not modesty. It is a filter, and it has been running in the background for a very long time. Here's what's actually happening when praise bounces off. The beliefs you hold about yourself, the ones formed early, often before you had language to question them, act as a perceptual lens. Everything you see, everything you hear, gets interpreted through that lens first. Your brain is not openly considering whether the compliment might be true. It already has a verdict. So when someone tells you that you are capable, your mind does not receive that as new information. It receives it as input that needs to be checked against what it already knows. And what it already knows is, you are not enough. The compliment loses. Psychologist Stephanie Stahl describes this using the concept of the shadow child, which is essentially the part of you that carries the old wounds and the beliefs that grew out of them. The shadow child does not evaluate incoming information neutrally. It filters, it distorts, and it tends to assume that other people see you the same way you secretly see yourself. So if you believe deep down that you are inadequate, you will read neutral behavior from others as confirmation of that. A colleague who doesn't respond to your message isn't just busy, they're probably annoyed with you. A friend who seems distracted isn't having a rough day, they're losing interest in you. That is what projection looks like in everyday life. And it means that even genuinely warm, sincere praise gets quietly quarantined before it can change anything. Self-worth originally forms through reflection. As children, we learn whether we are okay based on how the people around us respond to us. A consistent message of warmth and attention builds a stable foundation. Inconsistency, criticism, emotional distance, or just a household where praise was seen as unnecessary, those leave a different kind of residue. And here's the uncomfortable part. Even as adults, we remain wired to use other people's reactions as a mirror. The more fragile that foundation was, the more dependent you become on external feedback to feel okay, even if just for a little while. That is where the recognition trap starts. You achieve something, you get praised, it feels good for maybe a day, maybe an hour. Then the feeling fades and the old self-image reasserts itself. So you work harder, you do more, you try to be better, more polished, more impressive. Not because you want to grow, but because the shadow child needs the evidence to stay quiet. I have worked with patients who were genuinely accomplished, people who had done impressive, difficult things, and they were completely exhausted. Not from the work itself, but from needing the work to keep proving something. Every compliment gave temporary relief. None of it actually convinced them. That is because the praise is landing in the wrong place. Compliments reach the surface. They reassure the version of you that other people can see. But the belief that says you are fundamentally not enough lives deeper than that. And it does not update automatically because someone said something kind. The brain also has a natural bias toward negative input. One critical comment can stick for weeks, while 10 genuine compliments fade by Tuesday. That is not a personality flaw. It is just how threat-sensitive human brains are wired. But it does mean that the system is tilted against praise doing much structural work on its own. So what actually changes things? Not more compliments. Not waiting until you receive enough evidence from the outside world to finally believe you are okay. The revision has to happen on the inside, through deliberate work on the beliefs themselves. The first concrete step is identifying the actual belief. Not a vague sense that you are not good enough, but the specific sentence running underneath everything. Something like, I am not lovable. I am a burden. I only have worth when I perform well. Once you have named it clearly, you can start to challenge it directly. Not by dismissing it, but by looking at it from an adult perspective and asking, is this actually true, or is this something I learned in a context that no longer exists? Then comes the reframe, and this part matters more than it sounds. You replace the old belief with a new one, but it has to be phrased in a way your mind can actually accept. Telling yourself something you find completely unbelievable does not work. If you have believed you are worthless for 30 years, your brain will reject "I am magnificent" in about 2 seconds. Something like, "I am enough for this," or "I have real value even when I am not performing," is closer to the edge of what the mind can begin to hold. You write it down, you repeat it deliberately, not as a mantra, but as a counterargument to a belief you are actively trying to revise. Alongside that, there is a practical self-praise exercise that sounds almost embarrassingly simple, but is genuinely underused. At the end of the day, you note something you actually did well, not something massive, just real. The goal is not positive thinking for its own sake. The goal is building an internal source of recognition so that your sense of self is not entirely dependent on what other people say. Cultures and families that treated praise as weakness often produce adults who are completely unskilled at giving recognition to themselves. If that is you, this is worth practicing deliberately. And when a compliment comes in and the filter activates, when that "yeah, but" appears, there is one useful exercise. Pause and trace it. What did the compliment trigger? What did the shadow child immediately assume? What is the automatic interpretation? Naming that chain of thoughts breaks it a little. You start to see the filter operating in real time instead of just experiencing its output as reality. The people around you can offer warmth and support and genuine appreciation. That is not useless. Connection matters. Feeling seen matters. But if the underlying belief has not moved, praise will keep arriving and keep sliding off. The real job is not finding the right person to finally convince you that you have worth. The real job is becoming someone who does not need to be convinced anymore, because the belief has actually changed. Not reassurance on loan from whatever others happen to say today. Your own ground to stand on.